And how do we do that? Let me try to. Okay, okay. And S is the sales, and N is number of firms, B is the responsiveness of a firm, replying to change in price, like how much price you charge compared to the industry average. If you charge more, and this is how much responsiveness you will receive from the price differentials. All right. So, and then you have the average cost function, and this is how you show average cost of running your firm. And Q is S over N. It's when you charge the same price as the other firm charges. So basically, this will be gone, right? Because you are charging the same price as the other firms in the industry. So this one is gonna be 0, and then 0. So you're gonna have S over N. So every firm will share the sales in the market equally, and that's about the setup. And eventually we will have a curve. How are you going to show that? So this is the determinant, how we determine the number of firms that will exist in the market. And let's take a look at this graph. Let me try to make it a bit larger. Okay, I guess that's good. Yeah, so this is the price, the cost and price. Okay, the level, cost and price. Basically, it's a number, right? Dollar number. And this on the on the x-axis is the number of firms operating in the market. Okay, so this graph represents in a monopolistic competitive market, and the price they charge. And this is determined by two relationships. Okay, on one side, the more the firm, right? When you're going to the right, the more the number of firms there are, the more intensive the competition is gonna be, and then the lower the price is gonna charge. See, this is a price, right? This is the market price, and if you have more firms operating in the market, then you're gonna charge lower price because of the higher competition, right? And then on the other hand, we have a average cost curve here, the market cost. So why is it going up? It's because if you have more firms operating in the market, then each of the firms will be smaller. Okay, if you have a single firm running on the market, then basically your size is huge, right? Given that the market demand is fixed, and if you only have one firm, then your scale or your size is really big. Then you will achieve the economy of scale, right? And then you can run your costs low. But then if you have many firms running in the market, then each of the firms will share a relatively small share, a smaller piece of share in the market, and therefore your cost is going to be higher. So basically, what it suggests on this graph, as you are moving to the right, as the number of firms increases, then the average cost for each firm is going to be on the rise. It's going to be increasing. So together, they determine how many firms, the number of firms operating in the market here. In the intersection, right, that will determine the price each firm can charge and the number of firms it operates in the market. Okay. So I guess that's clear. Any question? Please ask me before we move on if you have any question. Okay. Okay, let's move on. So let's continue our discussion on this graph. This graph is not just like they destroy. It's all based on the setup of the equation, the equation for the monopolistic competition market. So we have from the very early in this chapter, we have the demand equation as shown as this way, right? Q equal to A minus BP. If you recall that, if you remember, right, this is what we have shown before. This is a very simple demand equation for the quantity demand. And then we use the demand function here and find the marginal revenue, if you remember that. So how do we do that? We try to put the P on the left-hand side and express everything else except P, right? P equal to everything else, right? Equal to a function of Q. And then we find a revenue equation, which we use the P multiplied by Q. That's the total revenue, right? And then we differentiate the we differentiate revenue with respect to Q, and we got the marginal revenue equation, which is here, right? P equal to Q over B. All right. So, and then we also discuss that for monopolistic firm, and the firm will charge they will set the quantity output to maximize their profit, right? And the level of the output is going to be where the marginal revenue equal to the marginal cost. And this little c here is the marginal cost, and this is the marginal revenue, right? So you just equate these two terms to find the price. So basically what you have here is that the price is equal to C plus this Q over B. Okay. Any question? So here is the relationship, right? Here is the profit maximizing relationship. Marginal revenue equal to marginal costs. Okay. And you know how to get this P minus Q over B, which is coming from the revenue equation, right? Which is from here, and you just play around. You find a P, express P in terms of everything else, multiply by Q, and then differentiate the equation with respect to Q, and you get this, right? You get this relationship here. So, what is this here? Let's go through what it means, and then we will show you how we're gonna get that. Maybe I'll show you how we're gonna get that first. So we have this equation, right? You can write P minus C equal to Q over B. Q over B is basically 1 over Bn. How do we get that? So, well, I guess I don't, let me just show you the other one here. Since I don't have a pen, so I think I'll just like share with you with the file that I already written. Maybe that will work. So basically here, what we have here is, I'll give you 5 seconds to look at this equation. So this is the equation we have. And this is, where do we get this? This is the monopolistic competition, right? The demand equation. So you can think about this as this is the A, this is the B. Wait a second. Maybe I'll show you the whole thing just in case. I will show you the whole thing. Okay. Yeah, here. So you see, you have Q equal to A minus BP, right? So you can look at this as this is the A. Well, how do we get this equation, by the way? So this equation is coming from here. All right. So you just factor out the P there. You just put the P outside. And then you will have X over N plus B multiplied by capital P. And then you minus little b p outside. Okay. So basically you have SBP outside. And then you will have this equation. Let's see if you can see that. So you have S multiplied by 1 over N. Because this is minus and this is minus, you have SB capital P. Then you put this small p outside because that's the price the firm will charge. And this is the market price, and you don't really touch that price because it's determined by the market, right? It's the market average. And you will have SBP outside with the negative than here. Okay. All right. And if you're looking at this equation, right? This equation, and if you refer this equation to the one earlier we have, like here, then you will see A, this is a constant. You can look at this as a constant, right? This is industrial-wide sales. As sales, responsiveness, and market price, right? This is the constant. You can look at it as a constant. And you have this equation, you have the minus B, well, just look at the minus B as minus SB, and then this is the price. This is price here, okay? So we have this equation. And then the marginal revenue is this. We showed that, right? You know how to get this marginal revenue. And then, so the Q, if you remember the Q equal to S over N, right? S over N. Why? Because if everyone charges the same price, then the P minus capital P is going to disappear, right? When it disappears, then the Q is basically equal to sales divided by N. Okay. So then, yeah, so you have marginal revenue. So basically, this is what we get, right, from the earlier part of the chapter. And you replace the capital B with SB. SB is coming from here. So you look at the capital B as the XB, and then you replace B with SB. You've got this equation. And we set marginal revenue equal to marginal costs, and you will have marginal revenue expressed in PQSB here, and then equal to marginal cost C, and you have this equation. Okay, and you replace Q in a condition that the price are same. Okay, and then you have Q equal to S over N. The sales will be shared by the number of firms equally in the market. And eventually, well, Q equal to Sn, you replace that, the S will cancel out, you only left with the N, right? N here, and then you keep the B there. So that's the equation we have, right? That's the equation we have. This is the equation we have as the one on the textbook here. The textbook here, okay. All right. So just take a look here one more time. All right. P equal to C plus 1 over MB, right? That's the equation here. Well, if you move the C over to the left-hand side, and then you have this left here, right? So now you know how we get this equation, and then we can look at this equation. What does that really mean? Now, P is the price charged by the firm. So let's make it clear. So this is not capital P. Let's change that. This is a small p. I think the problem is that the PowerPoint slides is different than the textbook, and then they cannot put the bar on top of the P, so they use capital P as the price of firm and P bar as the market price, and then they cannot do it on the PowerPoint slides. So I just change it, the P to small p, and keep the capital P as the P bar. But you will see what I mean here anyway, right? So P is the price charged by the firm, and now we so we have marginal cost here, marginal cost here, and then we have 1 over B, and B, if you remember, is the responsiveness of the demand when the price changes. Okay, how responsive is the price change due to the change in the price? And so what we have here is that so when we look at the equation, we can see that so P minus C is the price you can charge in the market, and C is the marginal cost, right? So the price you receive minus the marginal cost you have to spend on your production. So that is the remaining is the markup you can receive from your business. Okay. So each firm's markup over the marginal cost is P minus C. Of course, if you are running a firm, the higher is better, right? The higher is the markup. That means you're more profitable. And this markup equal to 1 over B multiplied by N. And what does that mean? That means if N is higher, your markup is lower. That is consistent to the graph we have here, right? Your markup is lower if the number of firms is higher. All right. So when N increases, your markup decreases for each firm, right? As the definition says here, right? Each firm's markup over marginal cost decreases with the number of competing firms. Okay. And as some number of firms, the price that the firm charge matches the average cost that firm pays, and which is indicated by the point here, E. All right. So the price the firm charges equal to the cost that the firm pays for the production. And at this point E, this is the long-term, long-run equilibrium. And we have a long-run equilibrium number of firms in the industry, and firm has no incentive to enter or exit the market. So this is where we have the stabilized number of firms operating in the market. All right. The number of firms is greater than or less than. I don't like to read it this way, like greater than or less than. So it's kind of confusing. So let's read it this way. If the number of firms is greater than the equilibrium number, then the firm have an incentive to exit. So if the number of firms is less than the equilibrium number, then the firm have an incentive to enter the market. So basically it's here. So if the number of firms is on the left to the equilibrium number of firms, then typically what we see is that the firm will make positive markup, right? High markup, and the cost is low. And you can think of it as, well, there is small number of firms operating in the market. So since we imagine the market size is fixed, it's there, the market is there, and if the number of firms is not a lot, small number of firms running in the market, then the size of each firm is going to be large, and then they will achieve some economy of scale, right? So that their cost is low, average cost is low, and the markup is high. And because markup is high, that will encourage more firms to enter. You sometimes get the efficient ones to compete with you, so that will drive down the number of shares each firm will receive in the market. And eventually, as the number of firms joining the market gets more, like increasing, and eventually it will dry out the positive, like reduce the positive markup that each firm will receive, and then eventually the P will be down because more competition, the cost will be high, and this is where it will stop. This is where the firms will not enter anymore. Okay. On the other hand, if the market is on the right hand side, there are more firms competing in the market than equilibrium, then many of them will exiting the market. Eventually, it will reduce the number until the equilibrium E here at this level. Okay, that's what it want to say here. All right. Because trade increases market size. So imagine if you running in your market, and that's the situation you have. But if you open your market to trade, that means all the firms in your market will have the opportunity to extend their business across the border, right? Extend it to the market that is beyond the border. And this is what it says. Trade increases market size. Market size is your market plus the other country's market. And trade is predicted to decrease the average cost because the sales is higher, right? The market size is higher. So each firm will be able to receive a larger, it will be able to serve a larger market, right? So they will achieve economics of scale, and so that they can decrease average cost in the industry, right? And so the average cost is expressed in terms of N fixed cost over sales. When the sales is higher, the market sales, right? The market is larger, then the sales is higher, then the average cost is lower. This goes up, then AC goes down. And because trade increase the variety of goods that consumers can buy under monopolistic competition, it also increases the welfare of consumer, right? So what does that mean? It means when you have more choices, you are better off, right? Think about you have only two firms running in your market, Huawei and Xiaomi. You are okay, you are happy. If you trade with the other country, like you trade with US, you trade with South Korea, then you will be able to buy Samsung phones and Apple iPhone, right? So you have four choices. So four choices is better than two choices, isn't it? So this is what I mean by you can be happier, right? You can be happier. The welfare of consumer will be higher if you have more choices under trade. And also, as we have always talked about, trade decreases average cost so that as a consumer, like you and me, we will be benefit from lower costs. So because more competition, right? We have Xiaomi and Huawei in the past, but once we trade, we have Samsung and Apple coming into the market. Then because of more competition, then the price will be lower. Huawei, Xiaomi has to compete, so they have to lower their price. And then Apple want to compete, so Apple has to lower the price too. All right, so this is the idea. So we will benefit by both the increased variety in variety and then the decrease in price. as consumer, we will be happy. This is how we can show on the graph. So when we enter international market, right, when we trade, an increase in the size of the market allows each firm, other things being equal, to produce more and therefore have lower average cost. And this is represented by the downward shift of C1 to C2 here, the downward shift. The result is a simultaneous increase in the number of firms as it shows on the x-axis, N1 to N2. There are more number of firms and a fall in the price, right, of each. Lower price for consumer, more choice for consumer. Okay. And so now we have a numerical exercise, a small exercise that we will do to show what we have learned graphically. So we transform the graph into some mathematics. Okay. So before we begin, do you have any questions? If not, let's move on. Okay. Came from an integrated market. What is integrated market? Basically, is trade. So we moving from autarky to a global trade market. And there are some setups we will do, some assumptions. Assume that B equal to 1 over 30,000. So this B is the responsiveness, right, to the price differentials. So your price, right, you charge how much you're gonna charge on your product and how much is it different from the market price, P bar. So this is a little b here. And the fixed cost, which is, well, $750 million. Well, basically you can think about this as the factory building costs on average, how much you set up the factory, the machines and everything. And the marginal cost of C equal to 5,000 per vehicle. So you are building a car, you are manufacturing a vehicle, passenger vehicle, and the material costs for building a car, like the metal, the sofa, the seats, the tires, the radios, and everything inside the car, that costs you about $5,000 per car. So the total cost here we have is, based on this setup, it's C, capital C, is the fixed cost plus $5,000 variable cost for each vehicle multiplied by Q. It depends also on how many vehicles you produce. Okay? Straightforward, isn't it? Total cost, fixed cost, or variable cost. And the average cost is simple. The total cost divided by the number of outputs you have. So you divide Q for the fixed cost and also here, the variable. So this Q cancel out, so you don't have Q here, and then you have Q there. And what it means here is that when the number of Q increases, your average cost goes down. All right. And next, suppose there are two countries, home and foreign. Home country has an annual sales of 900,000 vehicles, automobiles, and foreign looks like the foreign country is a larger market, right? Foreign has an annual sales of 1.6 million. So the foreign country has about 500,000 vehicles annual sales of vehicles more than the home country, right? So the two countries are assumed to have the same cost of production. So we assume that they have the same marginal cost and also the fixed cost. And so what we want to show here is that the integrated market supports more firms. Each firms will produce at a larger scale and sell in at a lower price. And then either nation's market will be benefit from international trade. So here is maybe we go through which is better? We go through the math first or we go through the graph first? Maybe the graph. All right. Let's go through the graph first. So this, let me try to enlarge this. This is graph. So this is when you have the home country operating by itself, all right? And you see this number of firms on the x-axis is 6, and on the y-axis is the price, right? So it's roughly, we cannot really see the price here, but it's roughly somewhere around 10,000 per car. So if the home country is running by itself, then the home country will have about six firms using cars. So if it is Japan, right? So you can think about this as Japan has Toyota, Honda, Nissan, Subaru, right? Mitsubishi, and something else. And anyway, so 6 different manufacturers. And on average, their car charged at $10,000 per unit. So in this case, you can think about this as a consumer in the home market. We are paying 10,000 for the car. That's our price. And then we have 6 different choices, right? 6 different choices, like different cars, right? In China, you have Geely, you have you have something from Guangzhou, something from Shanghai. Yeah. So we have these different choices. And then in the foreign market, because the foreign market is larger, you remember the foreign market setup, right? It's 1.6 million. So basically 1.6 million size that can support about 8 firms. So 8 different manufacturers of vehicles. And then because it's larger and firms that they compete more, right? The higher competition, they have 8 different manufacturers to compete, and then the price is a little bit lower. So in a foreign country, they have more choices than the home market, and they have 8 different choices and paying a little bit slightly lower price for each car. Okay. So what happened is if trade is allowed, if trade is possible, so this is what's gonna happen. This is what's gonna happen. All right. So we will have, if the world was integrated, so we have 10 manufacturings running in the global market. And then each of them will be charging a price that is lower than all these countries before trade. So this is slightly above 8,000, right? And this is 8,000. As I can see, it's around 8,000, right? So the price each consumer will be paying is 8,000, which is lower before trade for both countries. And then they have more choices, all right? More choices. Okay, so C is the combined market. Integrated, the two markets creates a market for 2.5 million cars. The market supports 10 firms, and the price of a car is only about $8,000. So what is interesting here in the graph is this. Before trade, all right, before international trade, how many firms are operating there? We have 6 firms in home market and 8 firms in overseas market. So the total number of firms is indeed about how many? 14, right? There are 14 different firms in the market. This is the total number of firms running in the world, home market and foreign market. Okay, but since the world is isolated, there's no trade. So even though there are 14 number of firms, 14 firms, and home market consumer will not be able to enjoy the other firms from other country, right? There's 8 different firms that cannot be selling to domestic market, so we will not be able to buy cars from those firms. Anyway, so the choice that the domestic consumer receive is about 6 different choices. It's same for the foreign market. They can receive a little bit more choices from the home market because they are larger, so they have about 8 different choices. Okay, but they will not be able to access the 6 different choices from home market. Okay, and what happened once international trade is allowed? Actually, about 4 firms dead, right? The total number of firms in the world is 10, which is less than 14 firms before trade. Okay, so 4 firms in this setup is dead. They are out because they cannot compete. All right, so the total number of firms is less after trade, but then because of trade, each consumer in each country, right? This consumer in each country can receive more choices than before they do, right? Before trade is allowed. So before trade is allowed, they only have 6 choices, but now they have 10 choices. Before trade is allowed in the foreign country, they have 8 choices, but now after trade, they have 10 choices. So this is how we can put together the market competition, and some inefficient firms will be dead, and then the better ones, efficient ones will survive, and they will run even under international trade. And then you can also receive the manufacturing goods from overseas markets. So the choice of consumer will be higher compared than before, and they are paying at a lower price. Okay, so let's work on the math. How do we show that mathematically? And then once we go through this, you will see exactly how it works. We just describe it on the graph now so far, but then what we have to do now next is to solve the numbers. So basically that's the setup. That's the setup, right? The home market size is 900,000. Foreign market size is 1.6 million. The integrated market size is 2.5 million. And then number of firms operating after integrated with the whole world market is 10. And then each firm's output is higher than before. The cost is lower, the price is lower. So it's good for the consumer. All right, firms become more efficient. Let's go to the math. How do we do that? So we need this page. And maybe let's have a break, and then we will come back to do that. We only have like 1 minute or 2 minutes.